Hi everyone, it's John Mitchell, and in today's video, we're going to dive into the world of materials management and look at the different strategies that can boost the efficiency and the effectiveness of a business's operations. Now, materials management is really crucial in a business because it ensures that they have the correct amount of materials on hand, which enables them to meet production demand. Because a lack of materials, it could mean that the production needs to halt or slow down, which can lead to dissatisfied customers and a loss of sales. However, on the flip side, an excess of materials can also cause problems within the business. And so, when managing materials, the operations manager needs to ensure that the materials arrive at the right facility in the right quantities on time and that they have the desired quality. Now, if a business doesn't have enough materials on hand, it can make it really challenging to meet customer demand because production can't make enough products if they simply don't have the materials on site. And that can cause the business to be out of stock, which can result in unhappy customers. It can also increase waiting times, which as the production team waits for the materials to arrive, which increases the costs of production. However, having too much inventory on hand can also impact on the efficiency of the operations. So, inventory can be damaged while being stored for long periods of time, which can increase wastage. And there's also financial constraints that can occur within the business because having large amounts of stock on hand increases the amount of space and capital required by the business to actually store those materials, as well as having their capital tied up in these idle materials. So, materials that are simply sitting there waiting to be used in production for long periods of time, that is money that can't be deployed elsewhere in the business. So the operations manager needs to then make some key decisions when it comes to materials. They need to try and decide if they're going to keep large amounts of stock on hand or so that they don't run out and production can have this continuous flow and able to meet customer demand, or they may decide that they want to keep the absolute minimum amount of materials on hand or anything in between. They also need to ensure that there's a continuous flow. So they make decisions about how they're going to have a continuous flow, as well as the lifespan of materials, as that can determine how long they plan to store materials for. And that can vary from business to business. And it could be that the materials are perishable, for example, or that there's a high chance that they're going to become redundant as product features change over time. And so that can help make decisions about how long they're going to keep their materials for. So, how can a business actually strike the right balance? That's what we're here in this video for. And we'll explore four key strategies, which are forecasting, master production scheduling, materials requirement planning, and adjust in time. And each strategy has their strengths and limitations. And we're going to look at each of those as we go through because these are the ones that are in our study design. Now, first up is forecasting, which is where past data and trends are analysed so that the business can predict future demand and therefore make key decisions about how many materials they're going to order and hold on site. And that can improve the efficiency of the business because it can increase the likelihood that the business will have enough materials on hand to meet their production needs, leading to a continuous flow of production without any hold ups, waiting times, waiting for materials to arrive. And it can also reduce wastage because the materials on hand are aligned with the forecast market demand and therefore they're not being stored for large amounts of time and having all those issues with damage and lost stock that we spoke about earlier. Now, this can lead to greater effectiveness because the business is able to satisfy customer demand because they've got enough materials on hand to meet that customer demand. And also, it enhances the business's ability to respond to any market changes because they're being predicted or forecast. Those market changes are hopefully being forecast. However, it is important to note that forecasting can sometimes be inaccurate because the past data does not always equal the future, and any predictions on future demand are not guaranteed, and therefore key decisions are made about these forecasts, and they may therefore be inaccurate. And it can also be time consuming to constantly monitor the data and the trends on an ongoing basis. Next, we have the master production schedule, which outlines what is to be produced, the quantities of each product that's going to be produced, along with where and when they will be produced. And having that information provides a clear direction so that the materials can then be planned and ordered to meet the MPS. So, an MPS can help streamline production processes because all the resources can be planned around it, ensuring that there's no excess of resources used during the production of the goods or services that are being produced. And like forecasting, it can reduce wastage because there is no excess of materials on hand, as well as less waiting times due to not having to wait for materials to arrive. Now, in terms of effectiveness, You'll see a common theme with all of these strategies, and that includes efficiency as well. But with effectiveness, the business is able to meet customer demand because the NPS is aligned with that customer demand, and therefore they should have enough materials on hand to meet that. And also, the business can reduce costs by not having excess resources. However, it may limit the flexibility of the business if rapid changes in production are required due to market demands that weren't necessarily predicted. And it may involve costs for dedicated staff to maintain and monitor the NPS on an ongoing basis. Now, following really closely with the MPS is a materials requirement plan. And so this is an itemized list of all materials involved in production to meet the orders of the business or what is outlined in the master production schedule. So an MRP looks at what needs to be produced as well as the materials on hand and the lead time. Now, when we talk about lead time, we're talking about how long it will take to receive the materials from suppliers from when they're ordered, and that can ensure that the right amount of materials are ordered and also received in time for production to occur. So, like the other strategies, that can lead to a continuous flow in production, as well as because there's enough materials on hand, and it also minimizes waste, therefore improving efficiency. And in terms of effectiveness, it can reduce delays, like we mentioned earlier, because there's enough materials on hand helping meet customer demand, and can also lead to reduced costs, like all the other strategies that we've looked at so far. However, despite those benefits, implementing the MRP requires very accurate data, which may not always occur as the predictions and forecasts it's drawing from are somewhat subjective. And then also, quick changes in the market conditions cannot always be predicted. And using an MRP can also be costly due to the need for specialized software and resources. And finally, we have the just in time strategy. And this is where the right amount of materials arrive just as they are needed for production. And that means that the business is keeping the absolute minimum amount of materials on hand, resulting in very small amounts of idle stock. And the materials that are on site are very quickly put into production. And so, due to having very few materials on hand, deliveries need to occur far more often, and that can even be hourly. So, using this strategy reduces the need for large amounts of storage and can greatly minimize waste as materials are not perishing or becoming obsolete or being lost or damaged from being stored for long periods of time. And just in time strategy can also achieve greater effectiveness because it enables the business to be able to be more responsive to market conditions. For example, if there are changes in customer trends that occur rapidly, the business can communicate with their suppliers to change the materials that they receive. So they don't have these large amounts of materials on hand that need to be considered before making these changes. And it can also improve quality in some instances. For example, a food manufacturer or a restaurant, for example, that has frequent deliveries is likely to be using fresher food materials, improving the quality of the food that's being produced for customers. However, a just in time is highly dependent on suppliers, so making the business more vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. For example, if there's a delay with a supplier or during transportation, then the business may not have enough materials on hand to continue production, which causes delays and increases the risk of being out of stock for customers. And there's also the likelihood that delivery costs and potential carbon emissions will increase due to more frequent deliveries. So, just to recap, the four materials strategies that are in our study design are forecasting, master production scheduling, materials requirement planning, and adjust in time. And these strategies can significantly improve the efficiency and effectiveness of a business's operations. However, each of them come with their own set of drawbacks or limitations that need to be considered. So, that brings us to the end of this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next video where we're going to continue exploring strategies to improve efficiency and effectiveness of a business's operations. But until then, just remember that for questions, activities, and help in your VCE journey, then come on over to teachingbubble.com.